Hello and welcome back. Well, welcome back to me. I came back. Savannah was great. Savannah was awesome. And welcome to week 7 in developmental psych. First thing I want to point out is my new hat. This is a hat I went to get. The Savannah Bananas. That is the semi-pro or the farm league team that's in Savannah. And it is like everywhere there. And I guess it's quite a big deal. And I loved the logo. I'm not even a really big baseball fan, but I went to the field and it was great, and just, people there and just didn't see a game. Those are sold out a year in advance. They do antics kind of like the Globetrotters do. And you could probably imagine that the cheer is, let's all go bananas. And then they go bananas. Anyway, lots more stories with that. But for now, for you folks, let's focus on Chapter 7. Now, Chapter 7 is really an important chapter for me because much of the reading and research and thinking that I'm doing and writing elements that I'm putting together focuses on the things that are happening during this particular phase. Now, it's interesting that years ago, when I first started teaching developmental psych, there was not really much going on in terms of emerging adulthood. Now, the original work that was published that we now see as really solidifying the idea of emerging adulthood was actually published the same year I started at KV, but it wasn't mainstream. It took all that time for emerging adulthood to become mainstream research, and it kind of shows you that scientific process of this great idea comes out, but then it had to be vetted before it was going to make it into a textbook. And finally, emerging adulthood is here. Now, all along, even when I took developmental psych back in the Stone Age, there was talk about there's a missing something between adolescence and adulthood, that there's something there. And that's where emerging adulthood has taken its place. So it's kind of have a new stage to add to Erikson's theory as we move from adolescence to emerging adulthood into early adulthood. And those mesh, of course. The timelines of things are not so clear now. But either way, what we are looking at and what a lot of this particular chapter is about is building on the foundation of identity that we saw in adolescence and firming that up. Not only are we moving on in terms of Erikson's theory into intimacy, connecting with others and formulating intimate relationships, but we're continuing to develop our identity. And you could probably imagine, even though adolescence is the identity stage, according to Erikson, you're not done. You're really just setting the platform for career development and relationship development. Where are you going to be? All these different pieces, note the term, all these different pieces that come together to form your identity as you move from this point forward. In this chapter, I introduce you to my own theory. It's a conglomeration of other theories. It's a piece of thought right now. It's not necessarily a theory to go test or whatever, but bringing things together, sort of an amalgam of different ideas that I call puzzle pieces. And the focus of that, original focus of that, was to examine relationships and their effect of our permanence and identity on the development of relationships. But it really, at least conceptually, has grown to include all aspects of a person's identity is made up of various pieces that come together, some of which are shaped by others, some of which are permanent, some of which are not permanent, some of which are totally shaped by ourselves. So the analogy of a jigsaw puzzle coming together, some of which we make our own pieces to fit them to who we are, creating this picture of our life, this sort of construction of our identity, really rang true for me in the early work I was doing with fundamentally looking at long-standing negative relationships and why they didn't why they kept happening, why people stayed with the jerk for years. I was interested in that, and from that emerged this idea of puzzle pieces. Now, the pieces that we put together, some of them are our personality, and therein lies our first discussion. So I'm asking you to take the Big Five personality test. Now, it's a trait theory test. When you look into the world of personality and how we define personality, we have the id, the ego, and the superego. We have the Myers-Briggs and different types of people. And then we have traits, where individuals can be measured that they have a number of different traits and different levels of those traits. So the Big Five is part of the trait theory perspective. They call it the Big Five because there's tons of tests out there that measure human traits that we associate with personality. The Big Five comes from a meta-analysis, is basically a study of looking at all of the studies, that these five tend to appear on all of them. So they're like the 5 mega traits. So now there are standalone, fairly well developed, even the free ones online, which are not really, standardized tests. But this stuff has been around for so long that even some of those free ones are actually pretty valid, particularly when you take this test and it's validating to you. Remember, you always have, you take a test about your personality or something, you don't agree with it, it's probably not correct. You know yourself way better than the test. Now, it might be interesting to look as to why the test tagged you that way. That's an opportunity for growth and getting to know yourself. But always retain that power over personality tests. You always have the ability to say, no, I know the test said this, but really I feel I'm this. But it needs to be thoughtful. The test is fun and educational, and it's supposed to allow you to kind of consider, well, I always thought I was an introvert. This is tagging me as an extrovert. Why would it do that? Those kind of things. So I'm asking you to look at the Big Five personality test, and then we're going to discuss that in Chapter 7, Discussion A. Chapter 7, Discussion B goes back to what I was just talking about. That is giving me your thoughts on basically the entirety of the puzzle pieces theory. Now, again, I present it as a model for understanding individuals who have found themselves trapped in long-standing negative relationships, or, as really came out of the work that I did do in that, the individual who goes from one horrible relationship to the other. They're just not really good at picking good people, notwithstanding that the individuals that they do get hooked up with are really good at getting picked. And so there's a mechanism that happens between those two individuals that attract them together, a fatal attraction, if we can say, notwithstanding the fact that that's a bad word, because oftentimes these negative relationships actually become fatal. And for some people, they're terminal aspects of their relationship personality. So, on a more positive note, taking a look at that theory, expressing your personal feelings about it, does it capture something? Do you know people like this that are well described in this particular theory? How could this theory be used to describe my career identity? How it could use to be described my changes over myself? I'm getting ready, doing more and more reading on it, but I really believe that this is a theory that could really go a long way in describing the process of gender identity development and the different influences that come along that. And that's one of the pieces that certainly front of the issue now, that is becoming one that we can shape and form. The gender usually described in the past, not that there wasn't trans issues and what that date back to the ancient world, but it was usually figured that was genetic. That was it. You can't change that person. Now, of course, we're seeing the ability to actually change that puzzle piece. And so I think it's an interesting time to use my theory to take a look at that. So I'm asking you to look at the puzzle piece and discuss that. In the quiz, we're going to take a look at personality traits that have been identified in the Holland test that actually correspond with the types of environments you like to work in. This is not, although it's used for career decision making, it's really not about the career per se. It's about the type of environment and the type of activities that you like to do. So if you are very prone toward organizing and numbers and whatnot, that doesn't mean that you can't be a counselor, which would be really strong in the social emotional area. It means that you would be probably pretty good on doing testing, doing ratings, your paperwork, all of those things. You'd really get into that. Maybe you'd be a practice manager or something like that. So it's not specifically to tell you this is what you should do, although those career descriptions appear. It's really to kind of like, well, no matter what job I get, what pieces are going to really appeal to me? What pieces of that job? Because almost every job will actually cover almost all of those Holland areas. So yes, it is used for people to pick what college they're going to go to pursue a career. There's no doubt about that. But I think the better use is a deep inner learning about what kind of work do you want to do? How do you want to work with information? How do you want to work with people? Much more akin to the work that Myers-Briggs is used for in terms of career development. It's not to say you're a nurse and you're an electrician or anything like that. It's really how do you like interacting with the world? That is really, so no matter what you're doing, as long as you have interest in that area, you're going to have a favorable experience in your career. It'd be a very positive thing for you. Then we have an assignment. It's kind of a big chapter here. The assignment is something that's really, really fun to do in class because we do it right there. We won't be having that opportunity, but is to create for yourself a job description for an adult, not a job description for a job out there in the world that an adult would have. It's actually, the job is being an adult. That's the job title. So, for those who took sociology, that would be the status, adult. What's the role? Job description. So what does it mean to be an adult? Put them all that. And then, so as if you were trying to hire an adult. Let's say you wanted to hire an adult to take care of all the adult things in your life. That's crossed my mind. What would you want them to be able to do? To take care of all your adult stuff. And so you write those things down, and then you're going to create a rating scale as we would do in business. You have a job description, and then if you're going to evaluate somebody's performance on that job, you're going to look at all their duties and you determine, well, how well have you been doing those things? So I want you to write the list first, and then you're going to do a little look in the mirror and evaluate over the past period of time. It's outlined in the course book. Can't remember right now, the past month or something. How well have you done being an adult? How many of these adult things have you done in the last week? Now, mind you, if I look last week or last month, or mind you, if I did that right now and I looked at the last week, there was a whole lot of not adulting going on in Savannah. Not that I wasn't crazy. I mean, I'm still responsible, but I wasn't doing any of the adult things. I wasn't teaching. I wasn't working. I wasn't, we had prepaid for everything. So I wasn't, but paid my bills, I guess. But all those things, anyway, you know what I'm saying. You write the job description and then you test yourself. And then you're going to be writing a paper that sort of shows all that. I want you to show me the list and the Likert scale, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 means all the time. 1 means never, that kind of thing. Make it nice, make your papers look professional. Remember the title page, that's always there, and then write this out, and then write your results as if you were going to self-evaluate how well you did as an adult. And please, like everything, feel free to evaluate your spouse, evaluate your grown kids, evaluate your friends, do all that, make this sort of a game sort of thing. Report that. It's always fun reporting on other people's scores on these tests and see how well you all have been in adulting over the last period of time. And finally, we have a couple more quests. Quest number 9, quest number 10. Big week. So there's a lot of things, but these are actually sort of fun things, really. You get to interact with people, you get to explore your personality, reflecting on an original theory that is not in any textbook, it's only in the course book, taking the famous Holland's test, and then working on this idea of a job description for adults. So great chapter. I look forward to all the discussions, seeing a lot in there. I know as I'm recording this, I went into the courses, already some people posting on this stuff. So let's get that board full of comments and have a good time with this particular chapter. So again, reminder about how you progressing on your biography, and next week there is a special assignment due, the identity special assignment, which is looking at yourself through a lot of different theoretical lenses. And so might be a good time to take a future look at that. That's going to be due next week, so be aware of that. That's going to be coming up, and we're in week 7, so we're past the halfway point. 5 more weeks or 6 more weeks left of class, and so we're at the halfway point, and so make sure you get working on that biography as much as you can. So have a great week, and I will see you in the discussion boards.